So I don't care what comes at you, you can reframe it and turn it into a gift or an opportunity to learn, grow, or get better.
Welcome to the Waves Business Coaching Podcast, where you can learn to grow as a leader, inspire your team, and optimize the operations in your organization. I'm your host, Jacob Carnes, and this week on the podcast, I interview Glen Stevens, the mental fitness guy. We talk about positive intelligence, or PQ, and how diving into your PQ can make you a more positive and more productive business leader. If you want to learn how to bring the best out of your team, be sure to go to our website at wavesbusinesscoaching.com, which is linked in the episode description. We would love to equip you and your team with resources to optimize your business and give you peace of mind as a business leader. Let's dive into my interview with Glen Stevens. Glen, thanks so much for being on the Waves Business Coaching Podcast. I'd love for you to tell me and our audience a little bit about you and your story.
Yeah, Jacob, it is so good to be here. Thanks for having me. And I'll jump in with my story. So I am a former pastor turned entrepreneur. And so what that means is right now I'm an executive coach and I specialize in helping business, like emerging leaders, business owners, figure out their mental fitness so that they can reach peak performance without flaming out emotionally or mentally or relationally or spiritually. So I want to help them thrive and do their very best and reach their goals and their dreams and protect the backside of that and not flame out, because way too many business leaders end up flaming out one way or another. And I just believe deeply in small business leaders and business leaders in general, because I see them strategically positioned to make our world a better place for everybody that they touch. And so if I can help them get better, they help the world get better. And I like that combination. And the biggest question I get asked is like, okay, former pastor turned, entrepreneur,
Yeah.
business owner. How did that happen? So I'll tell you that little story, because it's
Yeah.
like everybody seems to want to know that. And the short answer is, all right. So I'm a former pastor. I'm pastor at heart still. It's like you can take the kid off the farm, but you can't take the farm out of the kid kind of idea.
Yeah.
Um, I'm a spiritual person of faith, and my short answer is God. I believe God told me to. I was, and if you're not a person of faith, or like that's not your normal thing, it sounds a little weird. But for me, it's just as normal as breathing. I was praying with a couple of people, and this wasn't normal. This person had like this vision. The long and short of it was, I understood it to be, I'm supposed to resign and go start a business and do a couple of other things. So it was like a new assignment for me. So I remember coming home to talk to Jill, my wife, after that like time of prayer. It's like, hey, I think I'm supposed to resign and start a business and do like these things over here. And my wife was fully supportive. Like, I'm married 35 years this summer
Wow.
and have 4 adult children from 29 to 23. So that is a part of my life as well. But my story is God told me to do this. So that's what I'm operating with. It's like, if God tells you to do something, you should do it. And so I had to figure out, what kind of business should I start? So I had experience coaching in my background, and I thought I'd love to coach business leaders.
Yeah.
And then because of how strategically placed they are, and I want to help them get better, and I just like hanging out with business people. And so I started going that way. I got a certification with Business Made Simple as a business coach. And about a year after that, I came into positive intelligence and learned about that. And I became a certified mental fitness coach through positive intelligence. And so I like to say it's like you got two hands, and one hand is your business acumen, strength, strategy, operating system. Your other hand is your mental fitness operating system and strength. And if you're going to be doing battle in business, you don't want one of those hands tied behind your back.
Yeah.
And what I found, most people is they got some good business operating systems in place. They're kind of clueless when it comes to the mental fitness operating system. And I like to help with wherever people, those two need to work together. So whichever people need, sometimes both, sometimes one or the other, I like to coach them with that.
And I'm sure we're going to get here, but I found that when leaders aren't taking care of themselves, that they
Yes.
can't take care of the business. It's the whole airplane of, hey, put your mask on first and then help others. Um,
Yes.
I do have a side question based on something you mentioned. Former pastor, became
Yes.
a coach, had a coaching background. How similar do you feel like pastoring and coaching can be, as far as like, pastoring people in a church, and then hey, now you're coaching this leader for their business? Do you feel like those are similar at all?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. So it's just the application is different, but the
Yeah.
coaching skill set is very similar. So to me, a coach comes alongside to draw out of the person you're coaching what they need, and you help them be successful. And you sometimes they need some input, and sometimes they just need to think themselves clear, and they need someone with patience and encouragement and love to listen to them talk and
Yeah.
ask good questions to think themselves clear. So my coaching background came back as a pastor. About 15 years ago, I was certified with a coaching group called, man, I can't even, coachnet.com
Okay.
is what it was called back then. And it was so we could provide spiritual growth coaches in our church for people who wanted a coach to help them really take their spiritual growth seriously. So it's similar principles, and I just choose now to apply them, especially to business leaders and how they need help with mental fitness and with business strategy once in a while.
So with mental fitness, so you and I met back in October.
Yes.
We were introduced because one of your sons worked for Chick-fil-A, and I used to work
Yes.
for Chick-fil-A. So we met there. I finally read Positive Intelligence, one of the first books I read this year. Loved it. Can you explain what positive intelligence is and how it can apply to personal and professional success?
Yeah. So positive intelligence, and I use that synonymously with mental fitness. So
Yep.
positive intelligence, mental fitness, same thing.
Okay.
Okay. And what that um, so it's a combination of neuroscience and psychology. So neuroscience, cognitive behavioral psychology, positive psychology, and performance science. Like take the best breakthrough learning in the last decade or so in those four disciplines, you bring it together, synthesize it. That's mental fitness.
Okay.
It's using the gift of this brain we've been given and the power of neuroplasticity. So we have so much agency to be able to create new neural pathways and or reinforce the ones that help us, and starve the neural pathways that get us in trouble or where we waste a lot of time or feel a lot of misery. So it's harnessing the ability to do that, so that the three main outcomes of good strong mental fitness strength are healthier relationships with people we work with and live with and with ourselves. And then so that's one, healthier relationships. And then personal wellness, just
Okay.
feeling calm and peace and enjoy more often, and stress less often. And then the third one is peak performance. So being able to reach your full potential as a leader, as a person, that is increased when you strengthen your mental fitness.
So I want to go to the last one because that's the one that always piqued my interest when I heard this. Because I'm
Yes.
extremely competitive. I love keeping score. I love
Yes.
like how can I be more productive and maximize this and that. So
Yes.
how does mental fitness help with peak performance?
Yeah. Well, let's get into a definition of mental fitness a little
Okay.
bit. So I told you what it was, but
Yeah.
here's how I define it. I'm going to give you a couple of definitions, and that kind of helps people wrap their arms around this one. simple definition is your mind is either your best friend or your worst enemy.
Mm,
And what mental fitness is learning how to help your brain be your best friend more often and your enemy less often. Um, Another way I describe it is, and this is how Shirzad Shamin in Positive Intelligence would describe or define mental fitness. He'd say it's your capacity to handle the challenges of life and work with a positive mindset rather than getting all worked up and frustrated, a negative mindset.
yeah.
So that's what um, positive intelligence is. And we have three mental muscles. Okay. Now, we all know we don't have muscles in our brains, but the analogy works. There's three muscles. And if we strengthen these three muscles, we get mentally strong. And then I'll talk about how that helps us reach peak performance. But
Okay.
first, let me describe these muscles
Yeah.
for you. So there's three of them. They're kind of a weird names. You probably not heard these before if you haven't read the book. But one is called the saboteur interceptor. So that that what's a saboteur? We got to define our
Yeah. Yeah.
terms
Yeah.
here. Yeah. So a mental saboteur. These are the ways we self sabotage. So it's ways of thinking where we go negative, and it's usually because we're afraid. So fear is a strong motivator, but it's not a great long-term motivator. Like fear is only good if there's something around the corner that's going to get you, and you need to like act fast. But when you live with that level of fear or something close to it, when there isn't anything around the corner, that starts overloading your system, and that's when we start feeling all kinds of negative feelings and emotions. So
Can
we
can I get
want,
can I give an example of
yeah,
this for
yeah,
me? So
yeah,
I, for a while, I've gotten better, struggled with insomnia.
uh-huh,
And what
yes,
I found is that I'm sitting there in bed at night thinking about work,
yes,
and I'm stressed or worried, or fear might be a good word, of like, okay, I
yes,
have to do this tomorrow. And if I want to reach this sales goal, I need to, get these 3 workshops done, or whatever it is. But
right,
I'm sitting there at bed, not able to sleep because
yes,
a saboteur of mine is acting. Is that right?
yeah, yep, exactly. Now, if I'm going to take a guess that you and I share a saboteur together. There's only 10 of them.
Okay.
So mental fitness is based on factor analysis research. What that means is like the core factors that cause things are what it's based on. There's the factor analysis research. There's only 10 ways human beings self sabotage. And one of those ways is called the hyperachiever saboteur. So that competitiveness, that keeping
Yep.
score, right? Like I want to win. um, that's a hyperachiever saboteur, and that will keep me up at night sometimes too because I'm worried. And so when our saboteurs are affecting us, we're usually in the past or the present or the future, but not
Okay.
in the present. So we're thinking about the past and something that went wrong, and we're kicking ourselves for it, and all bummed out, and we sort of spiral down into that, and we waste a lot of time and energy there. And then, so that keeps you from peak performance. Like if you're thinking about what happened 3 days ago or yesterday or even 10 minutes ago, you are not thinking about what am I doing right now. And that takes away from the performance of the moment. Or we're thinking about the future, worried about, what if this goes wrong? What if that goes wrong? Will I be able to do it?
Yeah.
What if this person doesn't buy what I'm going to pitch them later? Or what if, sales drops? Or what if, like my son works at Chick-fil-A, what if there's a snowstorm? I live in Fargo, North Dakota. What if
Yeah.
there's a blizzard and we have to shut down the store for 3 days in a row? Like how much revenue, all of that. We're living in the future and afraid of what could happen, or we're living in the past kicking ourselves for what did happen. And our saboteurs want us to be in those spots rather than being in the moment and finding joy in whatever's in the moment. So we're having this conversation right now. I want to be right here, right now with you, enjoying the conversation. I'm trying to share some wisdom that can help some business leaders who listen to the podcast
Yeah.
and not be worried about what I need to do after our podcast. Like, I need to be right here, right now.
Yeah.
And our saboteurs keep us from living in the moment. And they cause us to waste a lot of energy because we are listening to like a tape that's running in our heads, and it's full of lies. Um, One of the key saboteurs, I'll name them real quick for you,
Yeah.
or a few of them anyway, so people have an idea. And just the names sort of help people go, oh, that's what you're talking about. There's a judge saboteur where we judge ourselves, others, and circumstances negatively. Like everybody's got that one. And then there's an avoider saboteur. You know what that is? Like when you avoid doing what you need to do.
Yeah.
There's a hyperachiever saboteur where you're always focused on the next thing and more, 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 and you can't even celebrate the good that just happened.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
yeah, I struggle with that one. As a matter of fact, I was given a talk about a couple months ago to a bunch of financial advisors. And I realized afterwards, I'd just given the best talk on mental fitness I'd ever given. And you know what I was thinking in my head, what my hyperachiever saboteur was saying? It was saying, you should have studied more and prepared harder because that could have been better.
Mm.
It was the best I'd ever done.
Yeah.
And what was going in my head wasn't good enough. And it was stealing all the joy of what I had accomplished. And I recognized it. So my saboteur interceptor muscle caught it. And I was able to go, wait a second, that is a waste of energy. And it's not helpful. And it's stealing my joy.
Yeah.
I want more joy and less dissatisfaction and
Right.
grumpiness. So anyway, that's a couple of others. There's a pleaser saboteur. There's a victim saboteur. There's a hyper rational saboteur. There's a restless saboteur. A lot of entrepreneurs have that restless saboteur. So those are the kinds of ways we self-sabotage, and we need to catch that as quickly as we can. So that's the saboteur interceptor muscle,
Yeah.
is that ability to catch it fast. And then there is a sage muscle. So our brains, Donald Miller will say, your brain has two jobs. It's to survive and thrive. And so think of the saboteurs are the survival part of your brain,
Yeah.
where it's like helping you survive, but you stay there too long. Like that survival stuff is really important. You don't want to die, but you shouldn't be in that part of your brain if
Yeah.
there is no imminent threat around
Right.
you.
Right.
And that's what our saboteurs cause us to live there too long. And then the part of our brain where we thrive, that's the sage muscle.
Okay.
And there are 5 sage powers based on the factor analysis research. So one is empathy, and being able to have empathy for others and for ourselves. Really important in business and in life. Next one is called the explore power, where we're able to discover facts and like get all the facts in place before you make an important decision. That's using the explore power. Or what's really happening? A sale didn't happen, and you thought for sure it was going to happen. What went wrong? Not blaming, but just going in with like figuring out what actually happened so we can learn from that and do better next time. That's the
Yeah.
explore power. The innovate power is creativity and finding new ways to get things done that serve us better. There's the navigate power, which is tapping into deep meaning and purpose. The why, like this is tapping into core values and purpose statement for ourselves and for our companies. And then the activate power is, once you have the facts and you've got a new idea, now you got to do something, and it's getting the job done in a calm, clear, focused way. And so those are the main 5 sage powers, and that's your sage muscle, and they all operate on something called the sage perspective, which is whatever's going on, and if anything happens, it can be turned into a gift and opportunity. So I don't care what comes at you, you can reframe it and turn it into a gift or an opportunity to learn, grow, or get better. And so that's all the sage muscle. And I think um, it's easy to see how that can help with business. And then the
For
last
sure.
one's called the self-command muscle, which is it's has a lot to do with mindfulness and sensory perception. But this is how you can go from saboteur thinking and ways of neural pathways, how you can stop and then shift and go into the part of your brain that's your best friend, where you do your best work. The way you do that is you use the self-command muscle, where you are able to tell your brain, if insomnia, tomorrow, all those problems will be there.
Yep.
So right now, you're not going to
Nothing I can
solve
do.
the problems. Right now, you're going to sleep. So you're better prepared to solve those problems tomorrow. That's kind
Right.
of like your self-command muscle at work.
I didn't think about it when I read the book, and now I'm thinking about it. So you and I are both Business Made Simple coaches. Here
Yes.
on a Mission is probably my favorite piece of content that we have
Yes.
access to. Sounds like Shazard and Viktor Frankl might have some overlap here with logotherapy. Um,
Yes.
I'm thinking about logotherapy. So here on a Mission and also Man's Search for Meaning, two great books you can read.
Yes.
But logotherapy being like, one, have a project to work on, two, have a
Yes.
redemptive perspective on suffering.
Yes.
Um, oh goodness, now I'm gonna blank and forget the third. But like
Yeah.
that
Well,
overlap of, hey, everything has a purpose, serves a purpose that can be spun positively.
yes. Yep, exactly. So that whole idea of the redemptive view of
Yep.
suffering, it's like, hey, what is going on in my life? And that I would say, I'd be tempted to say it's bad and spiral down and sort of get stuck in it.
Yep.
It's like, okay, how do I reframe that and turn it into a gift or an opportunity? And you literally can do that with anything if you want to. It's a choice. And so there's so much overlap. And I love Hero on the Mission as well. And to me, that's the navigate power
Okay.
is really there, because what you're doing in Hero on a Mission is you're saying, this is my life plan. This is where I want my life to go. And in order to do that, you have to think, what really matters to me? What's really important? And so you use your navigate power, that part of your brain. And that's why it's so fun to think like that. Doing Hero on a Mission is when we're in that part of our brain, we are energized, we are excited, we're right there. And so Hero on a Mission is a great way to help people get into using that navigate power.
Yep.
And then once you know that, you got to reverse engineer it. So now you use some of those other powers, like the explore. How am I going to get there? That's the explore power and the innovate power, because you might have to think of new ways um, of doing life that you hadn't thought of before
Right.
if you really want to get there. So that's using the innovate power. And you use the explore power to figure out, like, what are the things that are getting in my way right now of like, if I keep doing these things, I'll never have that life that I want to live. So I see them now and I need to eliminate them. And that's the activate power. You got to do something about it.
Yep.
So there is so much overlap. It's crazy.
So one of the saboteurs that you didn't mention, that is the other one I struggle with. Hyperachiever is one.
Yes.
The other is controller.
The
So
controller saboteur.
yep,
Yes.
I'm an Enneagram 8, which is literally the controller. So I was like, as soon as I read the name controller, I was like, I don't even need to know what it is. That's me.
Yeah.
Um, do you find that there's common saboteurs among like business owners that you interact with?
Um, you know, it's really amazing how all over the board they are.
Interesting.
So they're, but I do think here in the States, especially the hyperachiever saboteur is, it's almost like a badge of honor.
Yeah.
And here's another thing you need to understand about saboteurs, and this is really important. They cause us to self-sabotage, but every saboteur is literally based on a strength. And what happens, the strength becomes a saboteur when we overuse it or abuse it. So, for example, a controller saboteur, people who have that saboteur can struggle with taking action like too quickly, because they get uncomfortable when something, it seems like something needs to be done and nobody's doing anything. To step in and help at that moment is a great thing. But to step in and help and take charge and sort of like push other people away because I'm going to do it, that's when it's become a saboteur,
Yeah.
and it causes problems,
Right.
and it doesn't build the team. It actually alienates the team. So, um, the controller saboteur is one that often, like a business owner or leader, like, that's part of why we are successful are our saboteurs, the strength underneath our saboteurs. And it's in stressful situations we overuse them, and that's when they end up, our strength becomes our weakness. It's like
It's
the shadow
interesting.
side of the strength.
That's good. That's I hadn't thought about it that way, and that the saboteurs can be linked to strengths that we have,
Yes,
and
yeah,
that
yeah,
when
they're
kept in
all,
check. Yeah, yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
So what's great about that is you can peel that onion back and get back to the strength again, and then recognize, oh, when I lean into this strength too much, then I become that person that I don't want to be. And it kicks up all kinds of negative emotions and fear inside of me that, causes me to push other people away often,
Yeah.
or it causes relational problems like on a team. Teamwork and team morale can suffer when people's saboteurs are going crazy.
So when people are leaning into their positive intelligence muscles and
Yes.
getting their mental fitness in check, I think like going to the gym. Can you
Yes.
share some examples of how improving that mental fitness has had a positive outcome and impact on the lives of business leaders that you've interacted with?
Yeah, yeah, I'd love to explain that. And it is like going to the gym. So it's really, that's why I like the phrase mental fitness.
Yeah.
It's like physical fitness. In order, like, you read Positive Intelligence, which is awesome. And you could read a book on getting physically fit, which would be awesome.
Right.
But reading the book doesn't make you so,
That's
right?
right.
So that's, you need to work out the muscles. There's three muscles, you got to work them out. And when you do, what ends up happening is you install a mental fitness operating system, and that operating system allows you to be successful and not overuse and abuse your strengths. So some examples of that happening. One entrepreneur I was coaching, he's launching a small business, and because he was doing that, he also still had a full-time job. And at that full-time job, he was really frustrated. The leadership, he's just like, they don't know what they're doing. And he was frustrated with them. And he was thinking, you know what, I'm gonna have to go find another job, until my new gig is able to go full time.
Right.
And he realized, installing the mental fitness operating system, that his judge saboteur was really what was causing. He was judging his situation and the leaders of the company he's working for, and it became really clear to him. It's like, oh man. So it completely, his ability then to catch that with the saboteur interceptor muscle, and then go instead to one of his sage powers and work in that instead, completely transformed his relationship at work. So now he's there, he's energized, he's doing a good job, and he saves so much time and money not having to go find a new job and start over again. So that's one example there. Another one is there was a young woman who is a commercial real estate agent, and here where she was working is pretty much a male dominated field, and she's
Okay.
a young woman, and she was struggling in two different ways. One is like you work so long on deals in commercial real estate, and then when they fall through, it would it would like put her in bed for a couple days, just like, so the mental stress of her business was really eating at her. And then setting boundaries with these older men around networking and all, and the way they saw her and treated her was really challenging as well. And so she was about fit to be tied, and we installed the mental fitness operating system, and she was able to learn how to handle stress in a much better way.
Yeah.
And she was also able to set boundaries and not care so much about what they thought. Who cares? And that ability to do that uh, was just so freeing for her. I had coffee with her a couple months ago. This has been about 6 months after she had installed the
Okay.
system. She looked like a completely different person. Like she was radiant and smiling and like such in a good place.
Yeah.
And when I had met her, she was really in a low, and like her countenance was completely different.
Right.
So just lifting and changing that was big for her. Another example would be a guy who was really struggling in his marriage and with his two boys,
Okay.
and so that affects your business.
Yeah.
And, and any small business owner you talk to, if things aren't going well at home, that you don't work as well at work. Like your mind, you're preoccupied. You don't have as much energy. You make mistakes you didn't usually make. And so for him, installing the mental fitness operating system helped him catch his saboteurs, which would come out when his wife would say or do things that would pull out his saboteurs.
Mm.
He was able to catch that and respond in completely different ways than he used to be responding. And same thing with his boys, but especially in that relationship with his wife.
Yeah.
And so he found himself almost surprised that he could, and this can happen with an employee that you're struggling with too, or it could happen with a customer who is difficult. For whatever reason, it's
Yeah.
tough. Being able to catch your saboteurs and not respond like you normally responded, but instead respond from this new place of either empathy or creativity
Yeah.
or what really matters in the big picture, the navigate power. So for him, that completely changed his marriage and how he interacted in his marriage, which made work. Everything was better.
Yeah.
So those are like examples of ways when you strengthen your mental fitness, the the ripple effects can be huge.
That's amazing. Glen, where can people find out more about you and your business? And if they want to get their mental fitness checked and fit, where can they find out more about you?
Yeah. Well, you can find me at my website, which is mentalfitnessguy.com. I'm on LinkedIn. You can find me at Glen Stevens Jr. And then, and I'm Glen with one N, not two N's.
I have
And
to check
then,
myself on that.
yeah, my email is pretty simple too. It's Glen with one N at mentalfitnessguy.com.
Love it. I'll have all of those linked below in the episode description. So if you're interested in getting your positive intelligence and getting your mental fitness in check, Glen's the guy. So be sure to check out his info. Glen, thank you so much for being on the podcast.
Yeah, Jacob, thanks so much for having me. I really appreciate it. It's been a lot of fun.
Thank you so much to Glen for being on this episode of the podcast. For more information about Glen and his business, be sure to check out the links down below in the episode description. Thank you so much for watching and listening to this episode of the Waves Business Coaching Podcast. If you want more free tools and resources of how you can grow your organization, just be sure to subscribe to the podcast on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts. Organizations struggle to grow because they don't know how to bring the best out of their people. Here at Waves Business Coaching, we inspire teams and optimize operations so that you and your organization can truly thrive. If you're a business leader who wants to bring the best out of their team, be sure to visit our website at wavesbusinesscoaching.com. If you want a free plan to optimize your business, be sure to take my business report, which is also linked in the episode description. In this free assessment, you'll get a diagnosis and plan of how to optimize your business. In just 10 minutes, this tool from Business Made Simple will do what many business consultants take weeks or months to do. Don't miss out on this free opportunity to get an assessment and plan for your business. Thank you so much for joining me for this episode of Waves Business Coaching. Take care.